when we were following the proposed corridor, it actually went by 2 grave sites within like 20 feet. These old, they're kind of hard to see, and we wouldn't have seen them unless we were kind of wandering a bit. And then also we did hit several small rock foundations down above the Yuba River on this steep ridge going down. There were probably like some minor shanties or whatever. But in general, what I hear you saying is that when we're doing our work, generally when we're doing our initial canvassing, we're identifying control points, right? That are going to be considerations for the alignment. And so we would identify any potential site like that, not only to provide you with the information, but obviously to work around it.
Probably the key thing would be, as soon as you hit that, get a picture of it, send it to me or Bill directly, and then get some feedback,
Yeah.
Because it might end up saying, well, we better realign this thing, have to go back, the 1/8 of a mile.
Yeah. And then on this trail that we're getting ready to start, we've identified 2 vista points that we'd like to incorporate.
Is this Cascade now you're talking?
No, the Scotts Flat Trail.
I mean,
Yeah.
Well, it's like.
So
Cascade Shores and everything.
Yeah. So we'd like to do an interpretive signage there, and one of them looking down towards the major mining area that happened, and the other one looking onto Scotts Flat Lake, where they had this, of course, huge development of the dam and everything. And is that something that you would be interested in kind of being involved in proofing like our plaques to make sure they're accurate or
Well, if they're on us,
dialogue?
you gotta do it. But I'm interested in interpretation anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I help you even write the text.
We've worked with the so far with the local Nevada City Historical Association. They've been very helpful.
Now, are those points on us or are they on NID?
NID. Everything's on NID.
Right here, and he's still interested in reviewing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be glad to read it over.
And you guys are going to be doing the NEPA or the CEQA as well? So, I mean, it'll be Bill doing the whole deal?
It's what we're going to do is, in the agreements, it says just the opposite. But what we're really going to do is, if I got some funds, I'm going to let these folks use the funds and have them look at both.
Well, do the archaeology.
So in regards to any considerations, those would go to Bill in regards to archaeology, something we find on NID.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if I'm doing the project.
Yeah.
And that's the way we did Pioneer Trail with Bill Hare. We did a lot of survey of PG&E land, so.
Awesome. Great. Any other important points?
I mean, I think you got the principles, and I think you can probably identify stuff out there pretty well.
Yeah.
For interpretation, it's better if it's pretty durable, and the simpler the site, the less the evaluation is going to cost if you do have to go that direction.
But the bottom line, if we find something, whether we think it's significant or not, shoot a photo, GPS waypoint, fire it to you,
Yeah.
and then you can kind of...
Now, should it go to me first or go to you first?
Probably just for consistency, send it to me. I'll get it to Bill.
Well, it's also because you're the project planner, and so, I mean, you can look at it right there yourself and go, we better move it without...
Right.
I mean, you probably show it to me anyway.
Zach.
Yeah.
Throw it away.
Oh, no, it's Zach. I like the comment you made about moving a lot of dirt.
You don't care about old road beds,
advance this?
do you?
Oh, yeah. Historic
do.
road beds, you bet.
A
Immigrant
very
Trail
old cut or something.
Yeah, I mean, those are...
Actually,
we record those as isolated features or sites if they're significant enough. So, yeah, anything like that, any ditches, railroad grades, Toll Brothers.
In fact, right at the top part of this alignment, near the private property area, you saw that there's some old linear features out there. Looks like a raised berm.
Well, you got the Immigrant Trail out going on top of 20.
There was some hydrology
looks like
action.
a ditch, but...
There's definitely some hydrology action that was going on there. There's some deeper, significant, like 10 feet deep by 20 foot wide, that just kind of started out of nowhere.
But you mean historic?
Yeah, they've been there for a long time.
Massive ground spacing, probably that. Now at Forest City, it looks like they were hydraulicking on the north
Right.
bank and where we want to
Yeah.
put the camp, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all this stuff is happening. I mean, it's just hard to say this is ground sluicing and this is hydraulicing because they kind of
Sure.
blurred into each other. And,
Awesome. Well, thank you.
so now you want me to talk about rabbits and
Yeah,
squirrels?
yeah,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably the most significant biological component that we've been faced with so far is the goshawk and the spotted owl.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm not really going to talk about all
Yeah.
that stuff. but,
Okay.
I mean,
Well, I
Joe,
know.
Joe knows as much as I do about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or more.
It's battle with Maryland about getting
But I thought
done
it was
as
kind of
cheap as
interesting,
possible.
the stuff we have with the biological stuff at Forest City. We were talking about all these animals and bear hunters and all this shit. It's like, this is not really relevant to
Yeah.
what we're doing. It's an overview of what goes on in the Oregon Creek watershed in general. But,
Sure.
you know. Anyway,
All right.
we'll try to get
yeah.
that. We'll try to get that plan done. and-
Well, on the other bit of resource stuff, I will pass these out. Thanks a lot, Bill.
Hey, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
See, and this has actually some.
Hey, Joe, before we get started, can we do introductions? 'Cause I
Oh.
don't know everybody.
Yeah. Sure thing.
I'm Blair Hickman. I'm an FTA, and I'm interested in working on this project.
All right. Thanks. Let's get going.
All right, let's go around this way.
Okay, Mark DiMartini with FTA, working on this project as well.
Terry Hundemer with Bonk, working on this project as well.
Randy Hopkins with Bonk and FTA also almost, I guess.
And Joe Chavez, Forest Service.
And I'm with FTA and Bonk as well.
I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
Oh, Zachy. All right.
Jeff Brooks, I'm here with Bond, FDA.
You're a member of both, though, aren't you? Slacker.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the weeds, the noxious weeds, Kathy couldn't be here, but she would definitely be hounding you about weeds. And this has some photos. You guys probably already know, like Scotch broom. Everyone knows Scotch broom. When you guys run into if you run into something that looks like this, and I'd actually take this out with
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
You see, oh wait, that looks like what I've seen that before. Take a picture of it, send it to me, and I'll go, Kathy, is this maybe this knapweed? And, well, yeah, I think so. Where is it? Let me go look. Okay?
Because we could potentially build this in as a budget item as a part of the project for the removal of these weeds, right?
Yeah, if you know they're there.
Because I know that like there's Scotch broom up in Forest City in isolated locations, and you know, and I know that currently the forest is shifting a little bit. You know, based on that Cascade kind of conference they just had, with a more of a focus towards resource protection, and that invasive plants and restoration of watersheds is top on the list. So any place that we can address those components to any trail project that we're doing, I think would be good.
Well,
We
it's
also
also
talked about maybe possibly working this into our website, you know, or putting a link, you know, we can get a link, because we're revamping our website, we're in the process of it, so.
Well, but including BMP also, like when we go to move equipment out, and make sure that it gets pressure washed.
yeah.
And so that we're not transporting spore, other evil.
Very good.
elements.
Yes, Kathy would be very happy to hear you say that. Let's see. But it is a detriment if we find the weeds out there, because the trails are
Transporters.
roads and trails are big transporters of the weeds. So if we could avoid it, good, and help deal with it. You know, if we can't avoid it, we have to deal with it.
You have to eradicate it, yeah. Okay. All right, so let's. So first of all, the purpose of these sessions, right, is to address considerations that are brought into play during trail design and planning. And my particular goal for FTA is that by making sure that people who are involved in our planning and design of trails are more competent and knowledgeable about the major considerations of land managers that we work with, and we'll be able to have a more respectful conversation and relationship. And Chris Rudy and I recently did that 5-day federal trails training program, which is the premier federal program that's taught in the United States right now, and it was pretty intense. And so I actually took slides from the presentations at that training, and then molding them into this little show tonight. And so it'll be 3 sessions that we're going to do here, and the goal is to keep them the lab time in the room like this fairly short, and so then we can immediately go out into the field and actually practice things that we were checking out in the presentation format. So the first one's going to be on environmental considerations. It'll include archaeology, biology, botany, and hydrology. Okay. Now, let's just cover. So we got weeds down, and other biological. I was hoping to have someone be able to speak to that a little bit more. And what we're going to do is, I think Mark was saying, have something on our website as far as our local considerations here, plants and things that we should be aware of. And as I just mentioned a little bit ago, some of the things that have been made aware of us mainly are goshawk and spotted owl and biological species. There are things like the one-legged frog. Oh, wait a minute. No, that was chemically adapted. Spotted frog, spotted-legged frog, yellow leaping frog,
mountain yellow-legged, red-legged.
And there's a couple other ones that we haven't been exposed to as much, but are considerations at all. So understanding, and we're going to end up going back onto this a little bit later with a little bit more detail. But for instance, like with the bird habitat, both of those listed species share similar habitats, and generally the habitats are in kind of older, more mature forests and canyonous territory, sometimes southern exposures, but we actually have information, or Joe does, available so that when we're doing planning for potential alignments, then we can review known nesting sites, we meaning not you guys, right, but Joe would review these documents and maps to make sure there isn't any known sensitive areas, both in plant and biological, that we are thinking of putting this trail through. And the idea being that, you know, we don't spend this huge amount of months doing field work just to have it kicked down for an obvious known reason.
Also, you know, keep in mind when we actually go to construction, if there's a nesting bird, you know, it's my understanding that the nest and the bird are protected by law. So you can't, if there's a bird nesting, you can't disturb it.
Right.
So you have to be aware of that.
Is there
If they're
specific?
nesting, it doesn't matter what kind of bird it
Oh,
is.
just
You know,
any
it's
kind
not.
of bird.
It's my understanding it's any bird.
No, sorry,
Specific-
robins
No,
are not
if
accounted.
they're nesting, I mean,
It's sensitive.
I've
you
been
know.
told that, and I don't know
Eh.
where that
Keep your
came
bar
from.
conversations out of here.
But anyway, just be aware of that. You know, we don't want to disturb nesting birds. And
Well, the listed sensitive species that we're aware of do have chronological periods where they are more sensitive to distraction from their mating obligations. And so like when we did the high grade trail, we were only allowed to use mechanized equipment during a very finite period of time. And they'll be likely
It's a
applied.
pretty big window. It's like from February, middle of February through the middle of August. That
Right,
nesting
so it's
period.
pretty much a fall build.
So it includes the romance stage, and then the
Mhm.
nesting into the growing the kid out until they're out of the nest.
So this all has to be watched carefully, even on the NID lands.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
CEQA.
yeah.
Sequel, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
there's different issues with birds. I mean, some of them you can't run equipment around them and disturb them. Others, I mean, it's my understanding, just any bird, you can't take the nest down, you know,
Right.
and cut a tree down
Right.
where a bird is actively nesting. So, I mean, we're not normally going to take trees down.
Yeah, these particular birds, they would, if they found a nest within a certain distance, we would be
Right.
forced to wait until that nesting period's over.
Or
Right.
move alignment.
Yeah, or move the alignment. And if it was right, like real close to the nest, we'd have to move the alignment.
Right.
Yeah. But there's pretty broad, it's like at least a quarter of a mile. If there was a nest and we were anywhere within a quarter mile, we'd still have to stay out of that nesting period. You know, we might be able to put a trail, you know, within that zone, only after, you know, that period.
It's kind of interesting. Sometimes some of these birds that you have to stay away from by law when they're nesting and all that. Some of them will go over there and actually make a nest right where you're working, where all the noise is. You know, so,
Well,
so
Janice
they'll
was
they'll
commenting
move
about-
in, you know, even though.
Janice
Yeah,
was
it can
commenting
happen.
that she had an experience when she was a biologist in Arizona where they had like this spotted owl that nested right over a campground, right? So there's like tents right below it, you know,
Right.
like whatever.
Exactly.
So just, we're going to move on, but if you haven't heard of the goshawk, I recommend Googling it and doing a lookup on it. It's a very unique bird, and it is like very intense. And it's known for its attacking of humans if you get anywhere within 300 feet of its nest. And its attack format is blitzkrieg, right? So it takes on a high velocity under the canopy and blunt impacts you with the talons, okay? So it'll actually flay your soft, fleshy face, okay? So, and they, the same way they hunt animals. They'll actually crash through brush, right, and then take the animal out right onto the ground in a tumble format. So they're very impressive. If you ever see them, they hunt. They're known for hunting versus the red tails are up above the tree, generally cruising around. They get a terminal velocity and then cruise under the canopy through. When we were doing the Jersey Ravine alignment, I had one buzz me when I was on snowshoes doing the alignment. Just looking at me as he was going by, like, who are you? Anyway, so moving right along. Plants are another consideration, and it's a little bit more difficult for us because a lot of the sensitive plants are only identifiable during the spring when they bloom. And that is part of the thing that drives NEPA, is the botanical considerations related to that. Our recent project that we just completed on Rattlesnake Road for the Freedmans included Trillium along the stream bed that we identified ahead of time and routed around it, and which is not a listed plant, but it is a rare plant for this area. So, okay, so sustainable trail design, I'm just going to start cruising through these pretty quick. I want to get to the trail standards in the hydrology format because that, to the most part, will be our main practical knowledge that we need to retain. Okay? So, topographic profile of the trail layout. Relationship of topography to trail grade and layout. Obviously, in this area, we have lots of extreme grades, and so when we're doing design and planning, we're working with generally within like a 5% average grade. And so learning how to work with topography is not only important for a good, enjoyable trail, but also for hydrology, so that we do not get lots of erosion. So what's a sustainable trail? The objectives in doing sustainable trail building is learn, okay, I should just read my bullet points better. Define what is sustainable trail design, learn how types of users, trails, classes, and standards affect the design. How planning and information gathering process affects design, the need to establish major and minor control points in trail corridors, the importance of reconnaissance, how to design for land capability, aesthetics, and safety concerns, and the need for resource specialist review before flagging a trail alignment. Okay, so what we're going to be doing in the next week or so is identifying a corridor, and that is not a trail alignment. Okay, a corridor is a general route that the trail will go, but it will not identify the actual above this tree, below that tree type of deal. And the idea is that we want the specialists like Bill to be able to cruise through that area and not just look where our trail is, but in the adjacent areas for habitat considerations and whatnot.
And that can be identified just by a single, like kind of like center line corridor, and say, well, we're going to work within a, you know, 100, they're going to look like 100 feet each side of that. So you have like a 200-foot corridor centered on your one flag line.
So why sustainable trails? A lot of the members in our group are really into these downhill mountain bike trails, and not all of them are very well known for their sustainability. And so part of our quest that I see with FTA is being able to figure out how we can make fun and flowy trails sustainable. So these are good examples of a curvilinear trail. Curvilinear trail basically follows a consistent gradient through the topography, okay? Versus the trails that we are oriented towards in the 24th century have a much less even, consistent grade. There's lots of grade reversals and flow. So sustainability, what does that mean? What kind of, for how long, right? Is 100 years a sustainable trail? So here's our process here. They're starring their layout of this trail. You can see they're kind of shooting each other with inclinometers. They've got a little bit of brushwork in there, but really not much. Then 3 months later, and this is kind of just like the profile of a project. They're actually out there doing some hackage, organic removals. And then here's an example of issues with trails 5 years later after they've been built. You know, is the design capable of prolonged use without regular maintenance? And that's a big reason why we're moving more to flowy trails, is that they have a much greater resistance to breakdown, requiring less maintenance. So this is a great consideration in regards to the trail that we're going to be building. It is going to be mostly a descending alignment to the lake, and it's replacing a downhill trail that the state parks at least is labeling as consumptive in nature. And so with the Forest Service, who we're working with on this particular project, we have particular standards that we've identified, right? And although our trail is somewhat consumptive in its flow and fun, right? And we'll get into the terminology of that a little bit. You can see general consumptive trails for OHV has a much higher degree of wear and maintenance required. So although most public land managers have resource protection at the top of their list, all of them have different mandates and missions. So knowing which agency and their vision and what their basic orientation is very important when we look at what type of trail that they may be interested in supporting. What is a sustainable trail? So a trail that's been designed and constructed to a standard that does not adversely impact natural and cultural resources. It can withstand the impacts of an intended user and the natural elements while receiving only routine cyclic maintenance. Meets the needs of the intended user to agree that they do not deviate from the established trail alignment. So the first two are kind of no-brainers, right? The last one is talking about intuitive design. So talking about designing a trail that outsmarts the deviants in the user group. So impacts, here's our spotted owl right there, and those are some drawings I did up there towards Sierra Buttes. And so impacts that would be considered take are avoided, and impacts that are considered sensitive are mitigated through the planning and environmental review process. A take might be considered, well, that is a sacred Indian burial ground, but we really need the shopping center. Okay, in exchange, we're going to give you this little area over here near the freeway to do an interpretive site. Sheet flow runoff, okay, we're going to do a little bit of hydrology, is not diverted or accumulated and is allowed to continue on its normal flow path. All drainages include micro drainages or ephemeral, are not captured, diverted, or coupled with other drainages by the trail. Waters not accumulated on the trail are drained off into the landform where natural drainages do not exist. So imagine if you were to hold up a sheet of fabric, right, and you had water weeping onto the fabric at the top. It'll slowly, you can watch it saturate that fabric as it goes down out to the bottom. Our ground has the same capillary function, right? It absorbs water and then it'll hold water to a particular point until it starts to sheet flow, okay? Now when we are building a trail, what we're doing is we're slicing that fabric, right? And interrupting the static flow of that water down through that soil. And then furthermore, with especially using curvilinear formats, where they depended upon outsloping for their main defensive posturing for hydrology damage. What would happen is the outslope would fail, and then they would accumulate 5 or 6 micro drainages, and pretty soon these things would accumulate to a point that it would completely erode the trail, right? And so
a gentle slope is not enough.
Yeah.
There's just a natural tendency to get some wear where the treads go, and then it channels water, and that continues on down, right. And increases, and then it blows out and causes erosion.
And we're going to go over more hydrology with our trail standards at the end there when I can get up onto the board. Whoops. Okay. These are designed and constructed to withstand the impacts of 25 to 100-year storm events. The trail tread and structures will be unaffected by these events. Now this is an important consideration because right now our planning elements are based on 100-year, but we, with our new climatic change, are exceeding 100-year expectations more regularly than the 100-year concept, right? And so, you know, being more proactive with our hydrology planning is a good thing. Obtain as much background information on the landform as possible. These are some examples of different printed media that this particular person collected when they were looking at a particular area to develop a trail. And as an example, there is State Water Resources has a whole data sheet. The BLM has complete overlays and maps that cover mineral considerations and whatnot. They give you there's examples from park maps. There's city and county overlays. Okay, I think this is more the same. This is more environmental brochures and information. So LIDAR, I have no idea if that's an acronym or not, but light detection and ranging is a new, well, not really that new, but it is something probably we'll never use. And this is what it is. And it's just a basic way to be able to identify and visualize micro drainages and seasonal drainages and creeks.
We wouldn't use that?
Right.
Why?
It's above our head.
Okay.
Data not available. A digital
Actually,
map.
some of the maps that we make has that, it's that relief shading, but we usually are not, the maps we produce are at the scale that we're going to be useful for this. Use the old-fashioned topo lines.
Okay, so this is another software that different federal agency use, and this basically, what this does, it maps out hydrology, the amount of rainfall, and then matches it with how steep slopes are and soil types, and basically gives you kind of a heads up of where you're going to potentially have a dirt avalanche. Slope failures. I don't think so. I thought I had more slides in these. Maybe not. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so now we're going to jump right into, I know we're going to try to keep this one fairly short. So go ahead and take out subsection C in the packets. No, just kidding. These are our trail standards. I'm just going to run through. There's a couple I'm going to illustrate on this board, if that's okay, Joe.
Sure. Question.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you've got my revised standards.
I think that's what this is.
Okay.
And I didn't realize that you revised them.
Well, it's mostly the same.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, so on this I think we have this on our file section, if you guys want to check it out. But on this particular one for the Scotts Flat Lake Trail, we included a process section, which is kind of out the step-by-step protocols, and so you can understand where these different things will be implemented as we work through. Also, we have, Blair, what do you call that?
That's a Gantt chart.
Got a Gantt chart. And so again, just kind of helping you understand from a timeline perspective when we're going to be engaging some of these different steps. So trail construction standards are a combination of just no-brainer concepts with specific requests and requirements based upon the land manager that we're working with. Now, we've worked with Joe quite a bit, and so I saw that this was something useful to develop right away with some of the short-term memory issues that we have in our group. And but we also utilized this recently in the MASCAS project with Sam, as he was a specific client with a specific use and vision for the trail. So identifying standards besides best BMP, right? It also is articulating your agreements that you have with the land manager so that there's no, well, I thought that, you know, through the process. So does everybody understand our 5% pitch, our average 5% pitch alignment? So basically the way that I work this, I'm trying to see if within any 100-foot alignment, right, we're shooting for around 5%. So what that means is that for water dispersion or grade reversals, that we can have short sections that are over 5%, but in general we want the flow and the feel of the trail to be enjoyable for people who, whether they're riding uphill or walking. And also, the steeper.
Draw a little thing real quick.
Sure. Yeah. The steeper the alignment, the more sensitive it is to wear. So when you're riding on your mountain bike or when you're walking, you disturb soil, maybe in a minor way, but every person has an impact. And the steeper that is, the more severe the consequences. And it may not be realized in that moment. It may be realized when your next storm season comes, because then your disturbed soil is loose and it gets eroded.
So that's exaggerated, but it's like in general, from point to point, it's a general 5%, but we incorporating into the drainage relief, that section is steeper, but it's still rolling.
Mm-hmm. Now for grade reversals, our target, right, is to have no grade reversal, right, less than 20 feet,
Right.
okay? And what we're looking for is a distance right here of 12 inches from the top of the lower hill, lower section, right, to the lowest point, okay? Now, the problem with ones that are more subtle, right, well, which way is that going? Anyway, is that dirt, as rain happens and stuff, will migrate soil down and slowly fill this low spot. And what we were trying to do is design features that are going to last for a while without maintenance. Okay? Now, that means I'm going to try to stay on track here, otherwise I'll jump all over the place. Okay, so moderate duration pitches, right? 50 feet or less, 15% max. And that's include grade reversal or outslope feature. Short steep slopes as much as 25%, right, include grade reversal or outslope. So that means that you need a grade reversal within 25 feet of up to a 25% max climb. Another caveat on here, oh, I do have this on here.
That's one I've kind of, I actually
Amended.
pulled that one out.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and so if we're going to go over 15%,
Yeah.
That's the area I'd like to review. Hey, the only way we could do this is go steeper. Then let's talk about that on the map.
So so when we would identify that, what I hear Joe saying is that would be kind of like a treatment area where we would dialogue it and look what options are available before we quit.
Or maybe hardening or whatever.
Exactly. Okay. So obviously, if we have bedrock going up there, then it's going to be less of an erosion issue.
Right.
Our bench widths are 24 to 36 inches. Clearance from trail center for general obstructions, 5 feet for brush removal, and we generally go way beyond that. We normally go 8 to 15 feet from trail center for brush, and height clearance 7 feet.
If you're doing one for horses too, you'd be going 10 feet.
Yeah.
But this particular trail is not going to be horse.
Okay, so guidelines for preventing resource damage. Just general good building design practice, always build on side slope, okay? So if we're not building on side slope, what are two other great examples of where trails generally are found?
Like a valley or a meadow.
Yeah, like a meadow, perfect. Okay, meadow, what else? What's the other big common one?
The fall line.
Ridge lines, yeah, fall, right along the top. Those are two places that we don't want to. And the meadow's fairly obvious. That's where the frog lives, right? As well as it's harder to shed water off the trail. Now, what about the top of a ridge? Why would we not put one on the top of the ridge? There will be a test after these sessions.
You're stirring up erosion and it's going downhill? I don't know.
Well, for one thing, you can't control your pitch,
No.
right? And then, does everybody know the Does anybody know the IMBA half rule? The IMBA half rule says that the pitch of the trail should not exceed half of the fall line pitch. So whatever the side slope is, if it's 20%, they say, don't go over 10, right? If it's 2% side slope, they say don't go over 1%. I don't really subscribe to it, but that's what they say. In general, it's a good concept, and the idea is that if you are going the same pitch as your side slope, you have no control over your facility, which is tech term for a trail.
It is what happens on the ridge line alignment. Here's the top of the ridge, and your trail starts getting right on top. Well, in time it cups, right? Well, it cups. The water always stays in there. It's staying down. Let's now go the other way. The ridge, here's the ridge going down slope, and you're on top. And if your trail's cupped in here, water's never going to get out of that. And so you're just going to end up with a big erosion problem because you can't get your water off.
Okay, so back to the hydrology issues. This is a profile drawing, right? We have our creek, okay? And we have three types of water courses here, right? We have creeks, which in general are run all year round. We have seasonal drainages, which run seasonally, and ephemeral drainages are micro drainages, which do not run at all unless it's a significant event. But generally, ephemeral or micro drainages, if you look at the drainage, you can not see any disturbance, right, by surface water, right? So all three of those we treat with hydrology considerations. The ephemeral drainages are the key one because everybody misses those. But basically, as a control element in our design, we identify those as the bottom of a grade reversal no matter what. So in other words, we will descend into a drainage, right? If the trail is going up across this drainage here, right? That means that our alignment will go up and then descend into the drainage at least
12 inches.
12 inches, Blair, you get a star, and then climb back out, okay? The more vigorous the disturbance is, the more hardening we do to mitigate contribution of sediment into the drainage, okay? Ephemeral drainage is obviously where there's no sign of any water going across. We don't necessarily need to do any kind of surface improvements on that.
Well, give me some examples of hardening.
Hardening, most commonly is using rock and then embedding the rock like we did on the South Fork where we went across on the Truckee Ditch alignment. So if we're going to be doing a bridge, whether it's a Zaki bridge or just a real simple little deal, we want to identify where our wear line is. What's the seasonal high water mark, okay? And that should be very clearly evident. It's scoured to that point with very minimal amount of buildup of organics. And then if you look more closely, you'll be able to see a 50 or 100-year marks as well, where you've seen indicators of wear. That Stone Arch Bridge that we built in Forest is a great example because it had a main channel that was very obviously where all the water went, but when we looked really closely, there was a secondary shallow area that had either been overflown during an event or was a dumping spot for the ditch that was above it. But to be on the safe side, we built up the turnpike of a 3 foot tall or so component to keep the trail out of that low section. Creating a dam, of course. All right. All trails will be multi-use, non-motorized trails unless otherwise identified, right? And that just means that we are applying considerations beyond your personal hobbies. Trails are described as easy or moderate depending on elevation, gain, or length. And these are difficulty classifications. Short, difficult trails will be limited to provide maximum trail opportunities. Short duration, difficult trails have excess pitch, will be hardened to avoid erosion. Again, the environmental damage consideration. All trails may include technical side sections called B routes, and we'll get into B routes here in a sec. Switchbacks and rolling turns. Okay, there's been a lot of beer drinking discussions about what a switchback is, okay? But I think we finally narrowed it down before we ran out of beer. And what basically we always want to design is turning elements that will facilitate the users, okay? Hikers, no-brainers. Horses and bikes both need around a 6 foot radius turn, okay? Everybody knows what a radius is. You pin the center, and generally we're talking about to trail center. Now, that is called a rolling turn. Anything of 6 foot radius or bigger, right? A radius is a rolling turn versus a switchback, which is a change of direction on a side slope, right? Can be much tighter, right? Doesn't even need to be a curve at all. And so one key thing about switchbacks is that we need to have a grade reversal or a hydrology component within 50 feet of every, both sides of the switchback. And it's important when we figure those out is that we want the upper one to contribute directly to the lower one. We don't want the upper drainage to dump water off and then but miss the lower one where then it continues down the trail. So they should be aligned if possible. And then, so the way that we've been constructing, and we'll kind of get into this actually on our layout, our third session, more on switchbacks. Let's see if there's anything
Can I mention
else.
something real quick on the
Yeah.
on the switchback? It's been a recent change because I think of the popularity of mountain bikes. Before, the Forest Service standard design for a switchback was to in slope, where this would be tipped into the ditch side, and then the water would come out here.
Yeah.
But when you're on a bike and it's in slope, you're trying to go around, it's going totally opposite of your thing. So with a mountain bike where you have like a berm, preferred berm on the outside, it helps you get around that turn without just displacing the soil. Well, the water is going to go in here too. So that's why, well, then let's dump the water here before you get to the turn, and then make sure you catch the water and dump it again after the turn.
Right.
So the water goes down here and then back down here, and you protect your turn. But this is kind of a recent development. This was not working really well. It was kind of funny because the stewardship was working. They went and looked at our trail designs, and they were kind of yelling at me because I wanted to inslope the turn and create a berm, and said, well, that's not how you do it. Your own standard said, so yeah, that don't work for you guys, so let's do it this way.
And then furthermore, what we're doing now, which is kind of unique from what I've been able to see, is that first of all, on steeper side slope, which is a lot of what we're building on these days, we're broadening our radiuses by digging down on the top, right? So the hillside's going here. So we're excavating down, coming into this turn, right, as much as 3 feet, right? And then we're taking all this soil from this section here, and then we're building up a turnpike, right, which then sheds water into the inside. Anything that gets beyond this grade reversal sheds off the trail into the inside because this is cambered in, and then when we hit our lower grade reversal here, it crosses the trail and exits. But this is super elevated right here, and then depending on how steep it is, we actually borrow out of the center as well. So this could actually be lower than this segment of the trail. And because we can use the mechanized, we can displace a lot of soil and dirt and compact it as we're doing it.
Hang on.
Oh.
Hang on. I was just going to show you. What's important here is and the reason Zach is saying we do this,
Take a pen.
one of the reasons, is the slope going around this curve. You don't want that to exceed a slope that you can climb for old guys like me.
Yeah, that's a great standard. So this element, okay, here's the radius right here. Oh, that's not a radius. So there's the radius right here. So the approach going into this, right, is 5%, right? And then this area right here that describes this 180 degree, this does not want to be more than 10%, right, from this point to this point, okay? So big issues on some of the original designs that we were doing, and what I've seen is that these dramatically descend right here. And so what happens is people come into this corner, and depending on the sight line or whatever and how cambered this is, they speed brake right here, right? And or going around the corner, creating dramatic erosion and basically dehardening of the soils, which, as you know, leads to dust and that powdery Sierra powder that we get, which is horrible. So this just requires that, again, we do major cutting here and major filling here to create this 12-foot wide platform.
On steep trails, that bottom fill section most often is supported by like a rock wall feature to hold it up.
And one other thing,
Sustainability.
here, I mean, you might cover this in a minute, but where the site that you choose this, you want to find the most gentle place. I mean, the side-to-side slope over here doesn't matter. But here, where you make that turn, it does matter.
That's one of our identified control points that we look for is transition places where we can do a switchback. Okay, moving along. So rolling dips, grade reversals, or drain dips, right? So we covered that a little bit in the fact that the key thing is that they have 12 inches of elevation gain out of the lower section of the lower part of the dip.
And we're going to want no further space than 200 feet between 100 to 200 feet. So the trail's constantly, and it's not even like a built feature, it's the actual alignment of the trail.
Right.
Just up and down,
Yeah, so, and Joe, you're not normally be privy to this top secret information, but we have something we use, flow sticks,
Yeah.
to kind of help.
Are those trademarked?
They are.
PVC.
But the concept on that, in the past, what you had is these water bars that were like these dramatic events, right, that were placed within a curvilinear element, and or, oh, we need a grade reversal, something like that. So it's disruptive when you're riding to experience something like that. And the idea behind the flow stick, or what Joe is talking about, is that when we're doing our alignment, what we want is this. Nice, general, constantly shifting grade, right? So it's not
Mark's
like
getting excited already.
up, flat, down, flat, right? And one of the things that the flow sticks do is that if you've ever flexed PVC pipe, right, it doesn't like come out of a bend and go straight per se. So it's really easy to take on, and especially not so much for something like this, but after we've roughed out the trail, we lay the PVC pipe in there, and if we need to, compress the lower part, and that'll show us if there's any, kind of elements that are non-flowy. I don't know if that's a word.
You just made it up.
I just made it
Sounds
up.
good. We don't want non-flowy stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing, berm turn. So, basically, one of the things in regards to minimizing the amount of wear on the trail, besides having our trails have good sight lines and be intuitive, right? So you're not like causing people to do sudden braking, is to make sure that the camber of the trail is related to the energy applied, what I call vectoring, okay? And so basically, if we have a trail that's coming around this turn here, and this is the profile of the trail right here at this turn, right, then we basically might have a bench that looks like this, right? So that if this is the bike, right, that the energy is aligned perpendicular to the surface. Now, depending on the type of trail, if this is a multi-purpose trail, do you think this would be very comfortable to walk on?
No.
No. So whenever we're going into a turn like that, what we want to do is design in a level area and then our berm element, right? And then so that we have both a walking transition, especially on switchbacks or rolling turns. You always want to have a climbing or walking segment of the turn. On more dramatic turns that may be hit with speed, obviously we want good sight lines again, but they're broader, okay? The more deviation there is in lines, depending on velocity and whatever else, the more room we want to give for a safety factor for people to be able to hit these and comfortably without tearing up our trails and being able to have fun. Does that make sense?
How tight of a radius do you make a switchback?
How tight of a radius?
Yeah, you said
6 is minimum
You said 6
for a
feet
rolling
was
turn.
For a and then you said that's different than a switchback.
Switchback can be like Z, right? So no turn at all. It's like a
So you consider a switchback. So
a
you wouldn't
switchback
really
is
want
a
it to-
change of direction on a side slope.
So you pretty much not want to have a switchback on a mountain bike trail.
No.
Yeah, you always want a rolling turn, you know, even a rolling turn is a switchback, okay? Because a switchback is a change of direction or orientation, right, on a side slope.
So basically you want to always have at least a minimum 6-foot radius.
We do, yeah, for our
For
type
our-
of multi-purpose trails. And right now, a lot of the trails, if we're doing like the interpretive trail in Forest City, where we know for a fact that there's not going to be mountain bikers on it, then we can probably be a little bit more liberal on that. But even walking, right, it is going kind of like this is not a good thing, okay? And you should be able to facilitate that. So technical sections and B routes. I'm just going to cover this in here, although it's not a hydrology
Mark has a-
Sorry, I
consideration.
want to add something real quick.
Yeah.
Consistency is really important. You don't want to go from a high speed, 30-foot radius, turn, banked, and suddenly go around a corner into a 6-foot. You know, so
Yeah.
you want, you know, you might want to go from a 30 to a 20 to a 10 or something like that, so that the rider can transition and it's not slamming.
And that's what we're
brakes.
addressing on MassCast right now with the client, because we just went through and we identified all the non-flowy components like that. Or, you know, just as another, example, this is a turn, right? Let's say the intended popular direction is this way. What I see all the time is people, they'll have like a large tree or something right about there, right? So right about the time, oh, I'm going too fast, boom, right? Now if you're going to have a tree, this would be the spot for the tree, right? There's no issue there. You haven't got into crisis yet.
It also adds a choke point to slow you down for the turn. To have
Yeah,
the tree
now,
in front of you.
at the
before you-
beginning of, you guys are, not sure if all of you have ridden Ridge Runner, but where it starts at the trailhead, it goes down a gentle alignment for maybe 100 feet, and then hits a really sharp, like 4-foot radius turn or something crazy like that. So what we did is that we ended up bringing these boulders and then kind of shifting the trail so you can see coming towards them very visible obstacles like, oh, I got to slow down. And so way before they get to the boulders, right, they've adjusted their speed to be able to navigate those, and then doing the turn is not a big deal. Otherwise, has everybody ridden the Sunnyside Trail? That's the trail that starts at the top of Packer Saddle that goes down to Downeyville as a part of the Downeyville Downhill. The thing is littered with speed bumps, okay? And that is basically an example of non-intuitive flow, right? Where the turns are way too steep, the riders are coming in, you got a variety of riders, and they're like, oh shit, you know? And you get these huge big dust bumps, and it's horrible to ride, and they're very, very, very difficult to repair.
They didn't like my input on that.
I
When
give
they-
the same input too.
When they put it in, the lower half is Forest Service, the upper half
Yeah.
is private. And I lined out the lower half with them, but the upper half they did.
Yeah.
You know, it was really steep turns, and you know, this is not a good two-way
Yeah.
trail. Those are downhill only. You know, it's not good. It's not sustainable. And they said, well, this is mostly a downhill trail, so.
Yeah.
And I guess it's tearing apart. I haven't been on it for a long
Yeah.
time.
And my goal, I mean, part of the vision I have for this process, and then the whole idea behind FTA, is to be able to shortcut that normal retard progression that happens with trail builders. You know, you may build 2 or 3 trails before you have a you know, because the cause and effect isn't immediate all the time. And we really want every trail, as you notice, there's not too many trails that get built around here. And every trail we built, we want to make sure it's going to be the best possible trail, because changing the alignment on a trail after it's built is not a good thing. All right, so B sections, B routes. Does everybody know what a B route is yet? It's a alternate to the main trail. The main trail is the A route, okay? And the goal and objective with the B route is to be able to provide challenge sections for the rider, or sections of interest, right, that are clearly not part of the main trail and that are clearly identifiable to the level of degree of risk and challenge, okay? So things that they will include is at the beginning of the departure from the main alignment, first of all, the B route will be more discrete and narrower. Okay, so from a visual standpoint, it'll be clearly distinguishable. Here's the 3-foot wide trail I've been following. Whoa, what's that? There's something smaller, narrower. The second thing is that we'll put challenge filters at the beginning, or qualifiers at the beginning of the departure. And the concept is that if you have a difficult drop or whatever you're doing or proposing to do, that before people actually hit that challenge, right, that they know what kind of skill level is going to be required. So with the Pearl Necklace as an example up in Forest City, we have what's called a ledge up, right, which is really, again, it's not that risk oriented. Again, the qualifier should not have exposure or a high degree of risk. It should be purely skill oriented in its nature. And so that, with that one as an example, there is a rock ledge that's around this tall, right? And you ride up, you got to wheelie up onto it, and then, you know, to continue on to the challenge section. And first of all, people who really don't care about technical features, they'll see that challenge thing and they go, whatever, right on by, right? And so you're trying to do is create kind of like a calling card for the specific type of person who's going to not only navigate your challenge section, but also appreciate it, right? Rather than having Bobby's mom, right, who's, you know, new to mountain biking, you know, seriously get hurt from something like this. So in regards to our B routes, all our B routes are sustainable in nature, and what I mean by that is that compared to wood constructed elements, right, which rot and decay over time and need to be maintained, right, these in concept will be natural features that exist that we may enhance by aligning the trail through it. If you think about the Ridge Runner, those are our ideal types of B features, okay? For those people who've done Ridge Runner, there's a number of large granite outcroppings, right, that we've cleaned up so that you can, you know, one's like a tabletop that you can ride up on, and then off the other side, there's a series of those. There's one that's a jump that's pretty mild with not a big consequence, but, you know, these are challenge sections that if you're aware of them, right, that are really enjoyable. The other thing is that we design our B sections as much as possible so that you cannot see them until after you've gone by them. So the concept is that we don't want someone to do a technical feature ideally until they're aware of what they're going to do, okay? And so if they're aware of it and they've already done it, of course they can just go right on it. But otherwise, they'll see it possibly after they've already gone by it. And if they really want to do it, they'll hike their bike back up or whatever and they'll ride it. But we want to avoid circumstances where people are kind of sort of accidentally doing it, right?
Exactly. I'd just like to add one more thing on the Forest Service liability side of B routes. This was a big issue for us a few years ago. And there are certain things that we can allow, accept, and certain things we can't. We can't build those kinds of like raised structures. We build lumber, you know, like a narrow constructed ladder or a ladder. Okay, if we build that, it's like, okay, we built that, and we're taking on a lot of liability because we provided this for people to go on. This constructed thing, and we have to maintain that constructed feature. But it's what we have allowed is I see it's kind of compromise things. A good compromise is talking about the things that Zach said with filtering and making it off the main route, but also something that's out of like the natural materials, like large rocks that are there, and we could put dirt up to it that, you know, get you there. but using those kinds of things, but not constructed features. Even a constructed rock wall that had a high consequence probably would not be okay. You know, like you got a 10-foot high rock wall, you know, built up. You know, that's not going to work. But if you had a natural rock that had that feature and folks want to go ride it, well, that's up to them. You know.
Risk assessment on all of these are really key because the experience we want to provide is something of challenge, right? Not injury, right? And there's a fine line there, and a lot of people don't understand that. The difference between a roller, right, which is a jump, right, that depending on how much speed you can get air on, and a gap jump, which is the same profile, right? Does everybody understand the distinction? This is a roller, okay? And this is a gap, okay? It's totally the same experience, right? Woo! Just off the ground, right on down. The only distinction is that there's a consequence here, okay? Now, what I want to provide people is the experience and not the consequence. So, with any feature that we want to do, right, whether it's a log skinny on the ground or anything like that, we always want to do a risk assessment of those so that we can make sure that they're, you know, where are people going to fall, right? You know, are there big rocks right where they're going to fall? Is there a stump, 2-inch stump that someone cut off at an angle because they didn't want to bend down with the chainsaw? No, zacky punchy. You know, so those are the kind of things that we want to be really clear from. This is an incredible permissive environment that we're building in, and the first person who dies on our watch, the game's over. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right,
so
we want to bruise them, not kill them. Okay? So I think that's, and then of course any technical B section, right, are going to be, again, the same kind of deal that Joe was saying before, that they'll be brought to Joe's attention for approval prior to implementation. You know, and that's just because, you know, obviously we have a partnership with Joe, and when he hears about these crazy things and he has no idea what they're talking about, it's a lot harder for him to defend them.
Pearl lace.
Right? Pearl necklace.
Necklace, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that one, in its defense, is not that high off the ground,
right,
and it's been cleaned really well.
It's not really any higher
And
than
the elevated
like a
part
log
is very
or
simple.
laying
The
on
hardest
ground.
part is only 18 inches off the ground. But yeah, good point.
Good point.
Okay, so that's the end of this session. Are there any other questions? So the next session that we're going to focus on is going to be lab work, okay? And the basic distinction between lab work and field work is, one, you're dealing with concepts and planning, right? You're trying to put pull all the information you can together before you go out and get lost in the woods, okay? The field work that we're going to do in session 3 will identify actual critical things that we'll use in the field, like inclinometers, flagging, pinning, you know, radius tools, Zacky's flow sticks, all that kind of stuff, okay? So for the next session, which I think is on Monday, does everybody remember that? I know I changed the date at one point, but it's Monday night. Does everybody have GPSs? Okay.
Old one.
Got a phone. Your wife keep tracks of you. A critical part of our next process, and we really need to get the pony going with this because NEPA is right around the corner, and so we have to get the corridor identified, okay? And again, the corridor is just like the 300-foot wide zone that we're going to proposing to align the trail on, okay? So things like overall kind of like on the Scotts Trail, it's a 600 vertical foot descent, right, in around 2.25 miles. And we want to stretch that out a little bit so that we can afford resting spots within the descending alignment. So in other words, rather than a continual descending alignment, we'll have like an area where it either goes slightly back uphill or at least level for a while with like a vista spot rest area, so people hiking up or riding up from the lake, right, can have a slightly more enjoyable experience. People coming down have collection points, right, to where, oh, did Bobby make that corner? I heard something, you know, and or to stop and have lunch or talk about the incredible section they just rode, or stuff like that. So what our next process that we're going to do is basically we're going to shuttle vehicle down to the bottom, and we're going to start doing some transit lines, okay? So transect lines. And so we'll basically be looking for linear alignments amongst other things. So we'll be starting at the top of these segments of the terrain and then walking directly downhill to the bottom. And so old ditches, old roads, any kind of features of note. You need to have a digital camera, right? Pad of paper to write notes with if you need that, and then a GPS device, okay? Now, we're going to go, before we go out there in our planning phase, we're going to go through what control points are and what are the desirable and non-desirable control points that we want to record when we're doing these. And so the concept is, as we're going down those hills, we're going to make record of the side slope and what kind of soils we have and what kind of forest canopy we have and brush and whatnot, as well as many other things. Photograph, waypoint, note. Waypoint 43, 20% pitch. Jeff fell again, right? Or whatever. And then the last thing that we're going to do is we will then start walking our proposed potential corridor alignments. And those will be on pitch where we're actually thinking that the trail will most likely go. We will divide the alignment up, the proposed lab alignment up into segments, right? Which segments are normally identified between major control points, or which are places that the trail definitely has to go to. This is a unique vista location. The trail will definitely go to there. So now we know this segment from there to where we start is definitely A to B. We can say 5% is going to go just like this, and we can walk that alignment. And if we find issues with that alignment, then we can start working on modifiers. And it could just be kind of this expanding, branching craziness that goes on, or we could have like a Fortune 500 experience where we just like hit the golden alignment on our first walk.
Do we have a starting and ending point defined?
We do.
We do.
The starting point is going to be where the beer is in the back of the store at the Rainbow Market across from the 5 Mile House. And then the ending point will be across, we'll actually go down to the Lakeside Trail on the Scotts Flat Lake Trail, I think, as well, right? She wants to call them both that?
Yeah, it's just going to be Scotts Flat Trail, no lake.
But the one that we're going to intersect the middle of the other trail, so that's going to be a little bit confusing.
You're going to end up tying into the trail that's along the lake.
At the
it has
middle
no
of it.
name.
Right.
Well,
Yes,
they've
that's
been
the trail I was
calling
talking about.
The Scotts Flat Lake Trail.
Lower, upper.
Or Lake
They've been
Trail.
calling it, right?
I misunderstood my point. My question is that in the email that Peggy wrote, I thought she was suggesting that both trails would be called Scotts Flat Trail.
Yeah, it'd just be one continuous trail.
But
Actually.
the trail that we're building intersects the other trail in the middle.
Oh, does it really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it goes all the way to the dam and beyond, which is like another half mile or
Right.
more.
Out
And
that
then it goes all the way out the other way past the campground,
Oh,
and
does
then
it?
intersects with the road
Okay.
farther along.
Well, we'll deal with that later.
Yeah, yeah.
It will probably need to name
So,
something.
but anyway,
different.
word comes through where the guard station is and all that. It's identified fairly specifically how they want to go through their use area right in there. And so if you know where that guard station
The
is.
first gate?
No,
The second.
the boat landing.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so we'll be crossing that road adjacent to where you turn to go to the boat landing.
Okay.
Yeah, so that'll be
And
our.
you got to get close to Peggy's office.
Yeah.
She's a major hiker, and she's
Yeah.
excited about this.
Yeah,
thing.
and so Peggy is like a total partner,
Yeah.
and you know, my goal with this is to inspire her, right, to be looking forward to the next project that we're going to do together?
A couple items to look, just to mention, crossing any road,
Yeah.
try to do it 90-degree angles. Don't use the road, you just lose people, you get them lost. Colors, if you got like 3 different colors of flags, that way you guys have, well, you know, here's a good alignment, oh, but this, Randy says, I like this better, it's really cool, you can't agree. And say, well, let's flag them both, you know,
Mhm.
and then we have some options to look at.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, we have some different color coding with our flagging,
Okay.
right? Like, but most of that doesn't come into play until we're starting alignment work
Right,
versus
right.
the corridor.
Right.
And you're talking about, well, corridor work, we're not really identifying alignment.
No.
But in the alignment segments, like we have blue for hydrology,
Mhm.
right? So every low point or drain point is identified. And then we have white for our mileage, you know, 100-foot marks and whatnot, and I think a yellow or orange would be our 2 different colors that we use for this stuff.
Pretty cool.
Sorry, was there anything else?
No. In the campground area is going to get a little fuzzy, I think. Where to go? Again, we want to avoid the temptations just to I'll put them on the road and they could catch it back up here again.
You talking about where it ends at the bottom?
Yeah, getting towards the
Yeah.
bottom or right at the entry
Yeah.
to the campground.
Yeah.
Because there's several roads. It's going to need to
Right.
find a way to do some 90s,
Yeah.
but.
Do we have to go through the pay station?
No, it actually crosses before that.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no charge.
No, not unless
No.
you're using the lake, you're,
Right.
or your
In
camp.
fact, you'd cross before that, and you have to go around. There's a house just below it, so you
Yeah.
have to kind of go
And a
around and try
parking
to
area.
avoid them, so not to disturb them.
Yeah. Yeah, so my goal in the next session, though, is we're going to meet up at the 5 Mile House on Monday afternoon, and we're going to crank through the initial lab work and then do our first walk down the hill.
Meet at the 5 Mile House, but then have a drink at meet at the market,
Yeah,
smooth with them, but then in the end, have a drink over at the 5 Mile House.
yeah,
Because we're talking with them about parking, using them for parking. He's positive so far.
Yeah, I've met with him already,
And if
yeah.
he sees people using his
Right.
business,
Economics.
yeah.
Yeah, he's got a bike rack out front, so.
Right.
Politics.
yeah. And he's offered to help do some food stuff for our events.
He's actually sponsored.
And we do have a 30% chance of rain for Monday, so.
Perfect.
So you might want
That's
to
why
bring
we're
some
not doing,
appropriate clothing.
Well, no, I mean, are we meeting outside or inside?
No, if that's the case, then we'll probably meet at the restaurant.
Oh, okay.
That's a good call. Thanks.
So at this point in time, though, we're meeting on the patio deck
Yeah.
at the market.
Yeah, and if it's raining, we'll meet across the street at the restaurant. And so if you have access, you can get access to a GPS, okay? That's very critical. If you're considering, if you really think that you'd like to do more of this, I highly recommend the Garmin
62?
CSX or whatever, yeah.
I think.
And its prices come down really a lot. It's like half the price that I paid for it a year ago. And
Yeah,
but
I got
it's
mine on sale for $200.
yeah, they're very, very accurate. They got really nice colored topo maps on them.
It works in
And,
a canopy too, which a lot
yeah,
of
External
It
antenna.
works in your pack.
right.
I've forgotten and had them in a pack, and it's like traced my whereabouts for my wife to check out later.
Who's this house?
Yeah.
I'm sure she didn't just
That's
stick
why
it in
I
there.
want to say thanks a lot, guys, to put this much commitment into this kind of contribution, for Public Trail. Says a lot about you guys, and I really appreciate it. And I look forward to working with you all on this. One logistical thing, the agreement I send you.
Yeah.
If we'll get signatures from you and John, but also if you guys could do a sign-in sheet.
Yeah. You sent me a copy of that too.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the one you're talking about, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And put the dates.
You mean like when
You
for
mean
all
like-
of our time. And just
Yeah,
so FYI, you guys, I don't know if you remember this from the last meeting, but we're doing a dividend program on this one. So that means like today's meeting, you want to record the hour or hour and a half that we were here, right? And because at the end of the project, right, the concept is that you'll be credited a certain dollar amount for trail tools of your choice. And we just got our resale license, right, and placed our first wholesale order for McLeod's and other trail tools. So it's going to be a candy store.
I'm trying to think of a McLeod mount for the motorcycle.
Oh yeah, they have a telescoping McLeod.
Oh, nice.
That's a fiberglass. It's really
I also like to
looking
thank
nice.
you, Joe, for hanging out on your day off, even.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
awesome.
I had that other meeting to come to, and so it wasn't too much more to stick around.
Good.
Do we need to return this projector somewhere?
Yes, I know where it lives.
For tomorrow's board's work,
Oh yeah.
or John, I think, forwarded you an email.
Okay.
Do you want me to bring my motorcycle? Is that of any assistance
You're talking about Caltrans?
to help get back and forth across it?
Not really, because I think the guy's got a boat, right? So that's cool. So he's going to bring in the tools.